Where the heck am I? That's underground? Oh, there it is.
Whoa! What a huge ship! Why would a ship be anchored at a place like this?
There's no need to be so surprised. While it may look like a ship, it's actually Spina di Rosula's headquarters. My father was the one who asked for it to be built like this. Perhaps our taste in exterior design is the only thing we occasionally had in common. A gigantic and glamorous ship embodies discovery, opportunity, ambition, and conquest. It symbolizes Spina di Rosula's bright and limitless future.
Conquest.
And Paimon thought you were bluffing when you said Spina di Rosula had a glorious past. Paimon was confused why a group with such a history would live in the sewers. But now that Paimon has seen this ship for herself, she's been convinced.
Well, Poisson is where Spina di Rosula began, after all. It's our main base, our home.
Alright, go here, then we skip over there. Feels like bad French music. Means it's okay. Gondola music?
Melus, we're back!
Bad French music. Wouldn't gondola music be Italian?
Apologies for the wait, demoiselle, and our most important partners. You said before that you still had some business at the court. What brings you back to Poisson so quickly?
About that. It's because my partner here reminded me of something really important. You see, what if my father's case had something to do with water from the primordial sea? You still remember, right, Melus? On that night, it was raining?
Yes, the case was quite similar to that of Mr. Linney's. Both were what you'd call impossible murder.
Could you tell us a bit more about what happened before?
Yeah, of course. Many years ago, something called synth began to gain popularity in Poisson. At a glance, it was a kind of drink that could excite your mood and produce many pleasant hallucinations.
Wait! Didn't that guard guy who turned into water also mention that the primordial water could be used to produce some kind of potion?
Yes, he did. Considering what we know now, it's almost certain that synth is created using water from the primordial sea. If you drink synth for an extended amount of time, you'll suffer many side effects, such as losing the ability to focus or control your emotions. And if you were to stop drinking it completely, you'll experience flashes of paranoia and anxiety while lacking energy to do anything. It's an extremely dangerous substance. As he oversaw Poisson, my father was compelled to put a stop to synth abuse and called for a complete ban of it.
Boss's uncompromising attitude incurred the synth vendor's wrath, but no matter how much they threatened or bribed him, he refused to yield. Not only that, Boss became determined to find the mastermind behind the synth operation and put an end to the problem once and for all.
Yes, but the enemy was very cunning. So he could never get anything out of the dealers, all of whom only sold the stuff and weren't privy to the rest of the operation. Recognizing that, my father decided to contact the dealers in secret and cultivate personal relationships with them. Finally, he was able to convince someone to become his informant. The man's name was Jacques. He felt greatly ashamed about his work after seeing many families destroyed by synth abuse. That night, my father hosted a banquet at his countryside estate. He planned to meet up and exchange information with Jacques over some food.
Jacques.
But then, we heard 2 gunshots from the courtyard. We raced to the scene and found my father, still holding a gun, and Jacques, who was already dead on the ground.
Huh? How did that happen? Aren't they on the same side?
Sounds just like Lenny's case, doesn't it? In both cases, the culprit seemed obvious, but neither appeared to have any motive at all. Looking back on it, though, I now believe the most important clue was something we all overlooked at the time. There were pieces of clothing left at the scene. Precisely. It's all thanks to you that I made the connection now. Back then, we all just thought they were some costumes that Jacques used to disguise himself at the banquet. But, considering it now, it's almost certain that they belong to a third person at the scene. With one extra person, we'll also need to reconsider why the 2 shots were fired.
The first 2 shots. One shot was towards Jacques. One was the father shooting the other guy. The other guy is like, ooh, smashing primordial water in himself and dissolving himself. Kind of leaving the father like, what the heck?
You're right. We still don't know what happened. But my intuition tells me that we're on the right track to figuring it all out. I'm finally headed towards the truth.
Jacques was an empathetic man who was infinitely remorseful for his past actions. It's unlikely that he turned on Boss with 0 warning. I think this third person is probably the key to the full truth. On that note, however, even though this will not please you, demoiselle, as your and your father's butler, I must still offer a word of warning. Our opponent is insidious and cruel. They are extremely difficult to deal with, and Boss has already lost his life trying to bring them to justice. Even though Spina de Rosula has lost most of its former glory, Poisson has welcomed a new time of peace, and we have been allowed to live out our lives.
Awesome.
There is no need to follow your father's path. It would be both wise and in line with Boss's wishes to step back and give up on the case.
If that's indeed what he wished for, then he should have told me that himself. Was I not the closest person to him? And yet, I was the one most kept in the dark. What was the point of him dying without sharing any of the secrets he knew? Did he manage to protect anything in the end?
Protected you.
Synth is still here. Callus the Unfaithful is still his epithet. And Spina di Rosula is barely getting by. Nothing has changed. Did he think I'd just accept his meaningless death and live out my life just as meaninglessly? I've never accepted that. Ever. Not since that day, and certainly not now. I want to find out the real answer for everyone's sake. For the missing girls, for the victims, and for myself.
Navia.
This is indeed the best moment to act. Your partner appears to be quite reliable, and more importantly, demoiselle, I think you're also ready to take this on.
You two
So you
watch.
do know something else, Malus.
Yes, I do. In fact, even before that banquet, Boss already knew of the connection between Synth and the serial disappearances case.
Awesome.
But what drove all the
1
tensions to
hour
the boiling
of this.
point
Oh
was
my
the
God,
revelation
what
that you, demoiselle, had been selected as the next target to disappear.
What?
Boss also didn't tell you that he had been diagnosed with a rare illness. The doctors told him that he had no more than 5 years left to live. And the serial disappearances case caused him great anxiety. 5 years
Well,
was
only
nowhere
one person
near
know
enough
click
time
the
to
link.
resolve this long-standing conflict. But once he passed away, all the danger would pass on to you. Knowing all of this, he decided to use one final intimidation tactic before his death. He claimed to have already gotten his hands on some key incriminating evidence for the other side, and even told some members of Spina di Rosula about the details. But as long as you remained safe, he would not share the evidence with the public. If something were to happen to you, then he and all those he told would immediately expose all they knew about Synth and the disappeared victims.
Right, so nobody would be able to get off scot-free.
As we've seen, Boss's tactic has worked. Even though Boss has been gone for a long time, the other side has not tried to take Demoiselle's life.
Until now.
No, I don't believe it. He never appeared to look sick to me.
No father wants their daughter to see them weak and haggard, especially someone as proud as Boss. To him,
I can understand
dying
that
in a
now.
duel and suffering lasting dishonor as the unfaithful were still far preferable than losing face in front of his daughter.
So he chose to die in silence, so that he could protect me.
I'm afraid you're not understanding this correctly, Demoiselle. What Boss wanted to hand to you was not a parasol, but a sword. If Boss's spirit could hear you telling me that you want to find the answer for the sake of everyone involved, I'm sure he'd be extremely proud.
That fool. Couldn't he have just given it to me straight? No. He might have set up everything precisely because he never thought I'd be able to understand him.
Oh, she's crying again.
Is that the amount of confidence he had in me? And what if I was never able to make it to where I am now? Yeah. I suppose that's true. With the way he'd set things up, if I had wanted, I could have just lived out my life without a care in the world. But thankfully, he rarely talked to me about complex matters, and thus understood little of me as a person. In this case, he really didn't need to give me an easy way out. Malus, what was the key evidence that he shared with you?
It's the location where Synth is produced. Essentially, it's the enemy's headquarters. When he was threatening the enemy, Boss didn't share the specifics of the incriminating evidence he found. But if you want to use it against the enemy, you'll still have to take several things into consideration.
Why? If we know where the place is, can't we just go storming in?
You mustn't forget that we're fighting against a mysterious and dangerous organization that's been in operation for decades. There's no telling what might be lying in wait at their headquarters. We also have no idea what kind of evidence we may be able to find inside, nor what people we may be able to capture. But a single visit to their headquarters would be tantamount to a formal declaration of war. The worst case would be that we leave empty-handed, but also open ourselves up to full retaliation.
Then, in that case, why not work with the Fontaine authorities?
Well, you saw one of them dissolve during Mr. Linney's case. We have no idea just how thoroughly they may have been infiltrated.
That's true. Seems my father really had no choice. But things are different now. It should be a lot easier to prove the other side's guilt, now that we've connected Synth with the disappearances case.
You sound like you've put a lot of thought into this, Malus.
I am the butler, after all. I live but to serve the boss and Demoiselle's will. I've always been willing to take on any kind of risk for your sake. But considering my relative lack of ability, I've spent my time keeping secrets, performing basic investigations, and waiting for the right time to come.
Thank you for all of that, Malus. Have you discovered anything new in the past few years?
Let me think. One conclusion I came to was that the enemy must be quite familiar with Spina di Rosula, or at least have an informant planted here. When I announced orders to the organization's members on Demoiselle's behalf, I used to deliberately keep a few people in the dark and observe the reactions of the synth vendors. If the vendors didn't change their plans, then the individuals informed of our orders must be innocent. If the vendors packed up and fled, however, then someone must have given them the news. After several rounds of testing and investigative tracing, I've narrowed the suspect list down to 3 people. The first is Florent, Spina di Rosula's senior advisor.
Huh? Florent?
Yes, surprising, isn't it? He was one of the people Boss trusted the most, which also means that he was someone who understood Boss really well. Thanks to his position within Boss's innermost circle, he always knew our upcoming plans and could thus avoid capture this whole time. There's someone else like him too. Marcel, the head of Confrérie of Cabrières.
Uncle Marcel.
It's a guild in Poisson. Boss helped it to grow to its current size and prominence. In the beginning, they were only reselling some daily goods, but now they're one of the richest guilds around, with a lot of business connections in the city.
So, they're like a sister organization of Spina di Rosula?
Yes, you can say that. When we were fighting against the synth dealers, they provided us with plenty of support. It's a bit difficult to imagine someone using their own money to hunt down themselves.
The final suspect is Thierry, the man responsible for coordinating information between Spina di Rosula and the guards. Although the guards mostly leave us to our own devices, there are still many activities we have to report to the local authorities. Since Thierry is always in the know about our current activities, he could theoretically always plan one step ahead.
I see. These are all people who I communicate with quite regularly. To think that the enemy we've been fighting against has been right next to me all along, among those I trust the most. It's almost too hard to believe.
If you want to investigate them, please take every precaution to not alert the quarry. Judging from our experience, the enemy is extremely cautious.
Of course. And thank you, Malus. You've provided us with a lot of great information.
You're too kind, my lady. I'm just doing my duty. And before I forget, proving Boss's innocence would also mean clearing him of blame in Jacques' death. After that incident, Jacques' wife and daughter were taken into the Spina's care. They still live in Poisson today. If it might help, you could also pay them a visit. I can make the necessary arrangements.
Aw, thank you so much, Malus. You really are the best.
A new case awaits, my dear partner. I hope we can work together to uncover the truth and end this case once and for all.
Oh, we got a new case, Morky. 3 years ago, on a rainy night, banquet goers heard 2 gunshots outside the house. When they reached the scene, Callus had a gun in his hand, and Jacques had been shot and slain. Based on the investigation done, there was no possibility that anyone else could have done the deed and escaped. Callus thus adjusted to have been the culprit. Then they compare in, like, bullets? Does everyone get their bullets at the same place? I'm gonna say the guy in blue for second
settled, then.
person is.
Please excuse me, and enjoy your conversation at your leisure.
Thank you for arranging everything for us, Malus.
Alright.
Excuse me, miss. Do you need anything from us?
Hey, Navia's all quiet. This isn't like her at all.
So here's my thought. Our other guy, the young guy, is gonna be the traitor. He's gonna try to kill Navi here. The butler's gonna throw himself in the way, sacrifice himself. And Navia's gonna be dead, or something. She's gonna do something. She's gonna take her revenge right then and there. Or try to.
I'm sorry that I only came to visit after all this time. After what happened, I didn't know how
Oh,
I was
Jacques'
supposed
family.
to face the two of you.
Ah, if it's about that, there's no need to apologize. After my husband died, Spina di Rosula sent us a lot of mora and support. I understood your guilt and apology to be genuine.
But aren't all of those things nothing compared to the loss of Jacques?
You also lost your father.
I can understand the kind of pain that comes with losing a father so needlessly.
You don't understand at all.
I didn't know how to face you, because I didn't know what I could possibly bring as a consolation gift. I know only the full truth could bring closure to you. And to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Man, little girl,
I'm
go
sorry.
evil. Little girl, go evil.
I appreciate the sentiment, but you don't have to carry all that guilt. On the matter regarding my husband, my daughter and I have more or less found our answer already.
Would you mind sharing it with me? I really can't believe that my father could ever bring himself to shoot Jacques.
I always knew that my husband's money was earned through others' suffering. He told me countless times that if he could turn back the clock, he would never go into the synth business again. He had many regrets, and felt that he took the idea of providing for his family too literally. For the longest time, he thought Mora was everything. So when Mr. Callis came to him with a proposal, he accepted it almost immediately. He tried to be as careful as he could, but even so, he was still found out by the higher-ups.
They found out about his betrayal?
Papa didn't say that exactly, but Papa did tell me that I should never be ungrateful.
Before he left that day, he told me that he had no choice. It was only later that I realized it was his final farewell to the two of us. I don't know that for sure, but you could say that's the conclusion I eventually came to. Which is why I'm the one who should feel guilty. Callis had always taken great care of us, both when he was still alive and after he passed away. Even if he fired the shot that killed my husband, it was likely in self-defense. It is impossible for me to hate him for what he had done.
But Mama, why is Papa still the bad guy if he did the right thing? Papa always wanted to be a good man, so why did he have to do a bad thing in the end?
Well, things aren't always as they seem. You still feel like your papa was a good man, right?
Yeah, Papa was a really good man. The best in the whole world.
Then you should hold on to that. If a good man had to do a bad thing, then he must have had his reasons, regardless of whether he left you a parasol or a sword. He must have done so to give you a better life.
Oh.
Thank you for everything you've told me. I will definitely find the truth. The current state of things is not something I'm willing to just sit back and accept.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to hear this from you. Even though your personality is quite different from your father's, your determination when you speak is really similar.
You really think so? That's the first time anyone said that to me.
Jacques! Family. Testimony. Jacques' family believes he struggled greatly in order to kill Calais. Did Calais act as self-defense, or was there more to the incident? Did they find a weapon with Jacques that would prove self-defense? And also that Callis was a quick shot with a revolver. Pop up.